Have you ever wondered why certain people seem completely calm in situations where you feel like falling apart? Why do some individuals move through life with a quiet confidence, unbothered by insults, traffic, or the chaos of the world around them? Have you ever asked yourself why you react so strongly to small things? Why your peace feels so fragile? Do you feel like your emotions control you more than you control them? That the tiniest inconvenience can throw off your entire day? That you're constantly pulled by moods, reactions, and other people's opinions? If you've ever felt like your mind is a battleground and your emotions are winning, you're not alone. But here's the truth the world rarely tells you. Strength doesn't come from domination. It comes from self-mastery. Now take a moment and reflect. How often do you pause before you speak? How often do you let silence answer instead of your temper? How often do you choose peace over proving a point? Most of us are not trained for this kind of discipline. We live in a culture of instant reaction, of quick judgment, of constant comparison. The idea of slowing down, of sitting with discomfort instead of reacting to it, is foreign. And yet, it's exactly what we need. This is where Stoicism enters. Not as some cold, emotionless philosophy, but as a practical guide to inner strength and lasting peace. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress your emotions. It invites you to understand them, to investigate them, to become aware of what triggers you and why, and from that awareness, to respond rather than react. It gives you a framework for self-control, not by force, but by choice. The Stoic path is not about escaping life. It's about facing life, fully, honestly, and without unnecessary suffering. It's about becoming a better observer of yourself, understanding that no external event can disturb your peace unless you allow it. That no insult, setback, or loss can define you unless you give it that power. And in this mindset, you begin to cultivate the most underrated form of strength: restraint, clarity, and calm. Before we begin, I want you to ask yourself one question. What if you didn't have to react to everything? What if you could walk through life composed, grounded, and deeply aware of your values, unbothered by chaos, immune to petty conflicts, free from the tyranny of ego? What if, instead of being ruled by emotion, you became the ruler of your own inner world? If you're searching for that kind of freedom, for that kind of power, then this journey is for you. In this video, we'll explore timeless Stoic principles that can transform the way you deal with conflict, emotion, and identity. You'll learn how to manage anger, choose silence over noise, detach from outcomes, and most importantly, live from your values rather than your impulses. So if you're tired of feeling like you're constantly reacting, constantly explaining, constantly defending, pause right now, take a breath, and subscribe to this channel. Because what we're building here is more than a philosophy, it's a new way of being, a way that's calm in chaos, composed in conflict, and committed to clarity. The Stoic path isn't easy, but it is freeing, and it starts now with you. 1. The silent power of words. In a world saturated with noise, distractions, and constant stimulation, silence is often mistaken for weakness or passivity. But silence, when intentional, is one of the greatest expressions of inner strength. The Stoics understood this long before the modern era overwhelmed us with opinions. They believed that to master speech is to master the self, and in doing so, one takes a significant step toward mastering life itself. Epictetus, one of the most revered Stoic philosophers, once said, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." This is not merely a call for better grammar or clearer articulation. It's a directive to understand the implications and consequences of our words before we release them into the world. Every word is a vessel of intent, and when spoken carelessly, it can either heal or harm, uplift or destroy. We are often unaware of how much power our voice holds, and in that ignorance, we misuse it. Think of a time when someone said something that stayed with you for days, weeks, or even years. A careless comment from a teacher, a harsh critique from a loved one, or a rumor whispered by a stranger. Words shape our inner world. They can forge identity or fracture confidence. They can start wars or end them. They can push someone to greatness or to despair. This is why the Stoic path insists on the discipline of speech. To speak is to influence, and influence must be used wisely. Silence, then, becomes a powerful tool, not a void of communication, but a filter. It allows you the space to think, to evaluate, and to choose your words with intention. When you respond in silence, you are not withdrawing. You are conserving energy, observing more deeply, and refusing to let impulsivity override reason. In many cases, silence is the loudest message you can send. It signals composure. It shows that you are not easily provoked, that you are in control of your inner world. When we speak too quickly or too often, we tend to serve the ego more than the truth. We want to be heard, to be right, to win. But the Stoic doesn't speak to dominate or impress. He speaks to clarify, to understand, to elevate. He knows that restraint is not suppression, it's refinement. And just like a master sculptor chips away at marble to reveal a form, a Stoic removes unnecessary speech to reveal wisdom. Moreover, silence gives others space to be heard. In conversation, we often listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. We interrupt, correct, or prepare our counter-argument while the other person is still speaking. This behavior fractures relationships and fosters conflict. But when you approach dialogue with the humility to be silent and the curiosity to truly listen, you foster connection. You let others feel seen and respected. And paradoxically, this quiet strength earns you more respect than 1,000 eloquent speeches. A wise person doesn't always need to defend themselves with words. When you live in alignment with your values, your actions speak for you. The Stoics believed that a virtuous life was louder than any argument. So the next time you're tempted to correct someone, to retaliate, or to explain your worth, ask yourself, is this about clarity or is this about ego? Is silence actually the stronger statement? Training yourself to speak less but with more meaning is a discipline. It doesn't come overnight. You start by observing your patterns. Do you fill silence out of discomfort? Do you speak more when you're anxious? Do you blurt out thoughts before they're fully formed? Awareness is the first step. Once you recognize the impulse, you can pause. That pause is your moment of power. It's your opportunity to speak like a Stoic, or to remain silent like one. To follow the Stoic path is to be intentional with your speech. It means knowing when to speak, why to speak, and how to do so with purpose. It also means knowing when to say nothing at all. In the silence between words, character is revealed. And in the discipline of words, inner peace begins to take root. Because when you no longer speak to control others, and you speak only to express truth, you become unshakable, you become free. 2. Anger is not strength. It's a loss of control. We live in a time where anger is often glorified. People shout to be heard, fight to be respected, and respond in rage, believing it shows power. But the Stoics saw things differently. To them, anger was never a sign of strength. It was always a red flag. It pointed to a lack of control, a crack in discipline, a moment where impulse overruled reason. Anger, far from being impressive, was evidence that you had already lost the battle within. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his personal journal, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" Think about that. The thing that triggers your anger might be insignificant. A careless word, a traffic jam, someone's rudeness. But your reaction? That can destroy relationships, careers, and peace of mind. The outburst costs more than the offense ever did. And once you lose your temper, you've given someone else control over your inner world. Anger feels like power in the moment. It surges through your body, gives you adrenaline, makes you feel like you're doing something. But it's a deception. It doesn't solve. It consumes. It's a fire you think you're using to burn through obstacles, but in truth, it's burning through you. The Stoic path challenges us to rise above that heat, to cool the mind before the flame consumes our reason. What if, instead of reacting in anger, you chose to observe it? The Stoics didn't suppress their emotions. They studied them. They watched their triggers like scientists. What caused it? What story am I telling myself? What expectation did I hold that reality didn't meet? That space between stimulus and response, that's where growth happens. And if you can learn to sit in that space even for a few seconds, you reclaim control. It's not about pretending. You don't feel anger. It's about not letting that anger dictate your actions. Imagine someone insults you in public. The reflex is to strike back. But what if you didn't? What if you simply smiled, or walked away, or said nothing? That's not weakness. That's emotional mastery. The other person wanted to control you, to provoke a reaction. When you don't give them that satisfaction, you reveal their powerlessness and affirm your strength. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The Stoic doesn't seek revenge, doesn't stew in resentment, doesn't need to win a confrontation. He sees every emotional challenge as an opportunity to practice discipline. Anger becomes a weight to lift, not a chain to wear. With each temptation to lash out and each decision not to, you grow stronger. There is also a great freedom in learning to understand rather than condemn. The Stoics emphasize that people act from their own pain, ignorance, or delusion. When you realize this, you no longer take things so personally. Instead of saying, "They disrespected me," you begin to ask, "Why might they act this way? What are they struggling with?" This shift doesn't excuse the behavior, but it allows you to respond with wisdom instead of wrath. Another Stoic insight. Anger almost always comes from an expectation not met. We believe things should be fair, that people should be kind, that plans should go smoothly. And when they don't, we get angry, not at the world, but at reality, not matching our narrative. The Stoic removes these rigid expectations and replaces them with acceptance. People are flawed. Events are unpredictable. You are not owed perfection. Peace comes when you stop demanding it. So what does strength look like then, if not anger? It looks like calm, like a man who holds his ground, speaks softly, listens fully, and walks away when provoked, without guilt, without weakness. It's the ability to endure insult without responding in kind. It's the power to pause, to choose your words, to understand your own emotions before acting on them. That's the kind of strength that transforms not only your life, but the lives of everyone around you. In the end, anger is easy, but mastery, that's rare. The world will always give you reasons to be upset, but Stoicism gives you something greater, the ability to meet chaos with composure. And once you've felt that kind of power, the kind that doesn't need to raise its voice, you'll never go back to fighting to feel strong. Because true strength doesn't scream. It remains steady in the storm. 3. Don't argue, live the truth. There is an instinct in us that wants to prove we are right, to argue our case, to win the debate. We often think that convincing someone of our perspective will validate our worth, confirm our intelligence, or even bring us peace. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that arguing rarely changes minds and often costs us our peace in the process. They taught that truth doesn't need to fight. It only needs to be lived. The moment you step into an argument, you are not necessarily defending truth. You may be defending your ego. Think about it. How often do arguments escalate, not because of facts, but because of pride? One person interrupts, the other feels disrespected. Tone rises, emotions flare. The topic becomes secondary. What began as a disagreement becomes a power struggle. At that point, it's no longer about what's right. It's about who looks smarter, who has the last word, who wins. The Stoic sees this dynamic for what it is, a trap. Epictetus advised, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. What does that mean in practice? It means that every time we feel the urge to argue, we should pause and ask ourselves, why do I need to respond? Is it to clarify something with humility? Or is it to protect my ego? That pause allows us to choose wisdom over impulse. The truth doesn't need our defensiveness. It only needs our quiet confidence. When you're certain of your values, you don't need to shout them, you live them. Arguments tend to emerge when we feel insecure or threatened, but a Stoic doesn't live for approval or applause. He is anchored in his principles and therefore unshaken by disagreement. He knows that if his actions reflect his beliefs, he doesn't need to justify them to anyone. He lets the results speak. He lets his peace be his argument. There's also a hidden cost to constant argumentation. It drains your energy, clouds your focus, and often leaves you feeling worse than before. You walk away from the exchange rehearsing what you should have said, replaying every word. But what if you simply chose not to engage? What if instead of debating your beliefs, you allowed your life to embody them? The most persuasive thing in the world isn't a clever rebuttal, it's a consistent example. The Stoics believed that inner peace was a far greater prize than momentary victory in conversation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That principle applies to arguments too. When someone lashes out or tries to bait you into conflict, you gain nothing by becoming like them. But you gain everything by staying composed. That composure is your silent rebuttal. It says, without words, I'm not here to compete. I'm here to live well. This doesn't mean you should never speak up. It means you choose your battles wisely. You ask, will this dialogue create understanding or just more division? If it's the former, speak with kindness and clarity. If it's the latter, step away with grace. Your mental clarity is not worth sacrificing to win a point that the other person may never be ready to receive. You also begin to realize that not every opinion needs a response. Some people speak not to exchange ideas, but to assert dominance. Their goal isn't truth, it's attention or control. In these cases, silence is your shield. It confuses them because they can't control someone who refuses to fight. And in that space, you preserve your energy for something far more productive, your growth. The real test is this. Can you let someone think they've won while you walk away with peace? That is the high ground. That is what the Stoic aims for. Not moral superiority, but moral stability. You don't win by arguing louder. You win by being so grounded in your truth that others cannot pull you into their emotional storms. So next time you feel the urge to argue, stop and ask, what do I gain from this? If the answer is only temporary satisfaction, let it go. Stand firm in your values, but don't try to force them onto others. The ones who are ready will see it in your actions, and the ones who aren't, let them argue with the wind. You've got a life to build, not a fight to win. 4. Restraint is the real flex. In today's culture, there's a false image of strength. It's loud, reactive, boastful, and often aggressive. But the Stoics had a radically different definition. To them, real strength isn't in what you can do, it's in what you can resist. It's not in how loud you are, but in how quiet you can remain. Restraint, they believed, is the highest form of power. And in a world constantly pushing you to react, choosing not to is the most rebellious act of self-mastery. When someone insults you, mocks you, or disrespects you, your first instinct is often retaliation. It's human nature. But what's often mistaken for courage, striking back, proving your point, asserting your dominance, is actually the path of least resistance. It requires no discipline to react. Anyone can shout, insult, or slam a door. What takes strength is staying still, thinking clearly, and responding with intention, or not responding at all. Restraint is not suppression. It's not about bottling up your emotions and pretending they don't exist. That's avoidance, not wisdom. True Stoic restraint is conscious and grounded. It says, I see this emotion, I feel it, but I do not let it dictate my action. The man who can feel anger rise and still choose calmness has more power than the man who lets rage steer him. It's not about avoiding the fire, it's about becoming fireproof. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Every provocation is a test, every insult is a mirror, and in that mirror you get to see how much control you truly have over yourself. You may think, if I don't respond, I look weak. But to the Stoic, silence in the face of pettiness is not weakness, it's elegance. It's proof that your values govern you, not your emotions. Most people believe they need to get the last word. But what if the most powerful thing you could say was nothing? What if restraint became your default? Not because you're scared, but because you're too centered to be shaken. There's something deeply unsettling about someone who doesn't react when provoked. It reveals that they operate on a different level, a level where peace is more important than pride, where clarity is more valuable than clapping back. Restraint also protects your energy. Every reaction drains you. Every emotional outburst costs you. And the truth is, not everything deserves your energy. Not every comment, opinion, or offense is worthy of your peace. The more you mature, the more selective you become with your responses. You start to ask, does this serve me? Is this a wise use of my energy? And when the answer is no, you let it pass. That's not weakness, that's self-respect. Insecurity is loud, strength is quiet, the need to always have something. To always clap back, usually comes from a fear of not being seen or respected. But the man who knows his worth doesn't need validation. He doesn't retaliate because he knows he's already won. He didn't let someone else change his emotional state. That's a win most people never even realize is possible. Think of restraint like a muscle. At first it's hard. The urge to respond is strong. You'll feel like you're being passive, like you're letting people win. But with practice, you begin to notice something extraordinary. People stop expecting you to play small games. You change the energy of every interaction just by refusing to be pulled into chaos. You elevate the entire space around you because you refuse to sink to anyone's level. The Stoic lives by one rule: do not be governed by anything external. Not insults, not praise, not opinions, not provocation. He answers only to his principles. He is guided by reason, not reactions. So when you feel triggered, ask yourself, is this worth it? Will this matter tomorrow? What version of myself am I choosing to feed? 9 times out of 10, restraint will be the better answer. Restraint isn't about being a pushover. It's about being untouchable. It's not that you can't respond. It's that you choose not to. Because you're playing a different game. One where your peace is more valuable than their attention. One where your growth is more important than their approval. And in that choice, in that stillness, you reveal a level of strength the world desperately needs to see. 5. Reflect before you react. Most people live life in reaction mode. Something happens and they respond. A tone of voice, a social media comment, a glance, a rejection, and suddenly they're spiraling. But the Stoic way is different. It teaches us that the space between stimulus and response is where your power lives. And it is in that space that self-reflection becomes your greatest ally. Before you react, ask, what's really going on inside me? That simple habit could change the course of your life. Self-reflection is not a luxury. It's not something reserved for quiet evenings or weekends alone. For the Stoic, it's a daily necessity. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, began and ended each day with introspection. He would ask himself, what did I do well today? What stirred me emotionally? Where did I fall short? In doing this, he held himself accountable not just for his actions, but for his thoughts and feelings. Because growth starts not in changing the world, but in examining yourself. Most of us believe that we are rational creatures, but we are not. We are emotional creatures who occasionally think. And if we don't take time to reflect on what we feel, we become slaves to those emotions. We react instead of respond. We explode over small things and miss the real message beneath the moment. Stoic reflection slows you down. It helps you question the automatic stories your brain tells you. It helps you replace reaction with wisdom. Let's say someone criticizes you in public. Your immediate reaction might be defensiveness or shame. But reflection asks, why does this bother me so much? Is this person's opinion rooted in truth? Am I reacting to what they said, or what I already believe about myself? In this pause, clarity enters. You begin to distinguish between what's yours and what's theirs. And suddenly, you are no longer emotionally hijacked. You are back in control. Another benefit of reflection is pattern recognition. If you take the time to look inward consistently, you'll start to notice recurring triggers. Maybe it's the fear of being dismissed. Maybe it's your need for validation. Maybe it's a wound from the past that gets reopened every time someone raises their voice. By identifying these patterns, you weaken their grip on you. You begin to anticipate them instead of being ambushed by them. And that anticipation gives you freedom. Reflection also helps you take responsibility without shame. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: not every negative moment in our lives is someone else's fault. Sometimes we overreact. Sometimes we misinterpret. Sometimes we project. The Stoic doesn't beat himself up for this. He learns. He takes ownership not as a way to punish himself, but as a path to empowerment. Because when you own your response, you own your peace. It's important to note that self-reflection isn't about becoming hypercritical or emotionally numb. It's about awareness. It's about knowing yourself so well that when life tests you, you don't fall apart. You adapt. You don't silence your emotions. You understand them. You begin to act from your values, not your moods. That's the difference between existing and living deliberately. You can practice this in simple ways. At the end of the day, write down what triggered you. Ask what belief was challenged in that moment. Was it your need to be respected, your desire to be liked, your fear of rejection? Then ask what a Stoic response would have looked like. Not perfection, just progress. Over time, these small reflections turn into deep transformations. Even in the heat of the moment, you can train yourself to step back. Take a breath. Ask, what outcome do I want here? What kind of person do I want to be right now? This kind of inner dialogue is what sets you apart. While others are swept away by emotion, you stay grounded. You navigate storms not by controlling the wind, but by mastering the sails of your own mind. In the end, Stoicism is not about suppressing emotion, it's about understanding it. Self-reflection is your compass. It's how you navigate confusion, conflict, and chaos without losing your center, and the more you practice it, the more unshakable you become. Because once you understand yourself, No one else can control you. You'll no longer be reactive. You'll be rooted, not perfect, but purposeful. You've just taken a walk through some of the most powerful principles in Stoic philosophy, principles that have stood the test of time, outlasting empires, revolutions, and modern noise. And now the question is no longer, what should I do? The question is, will you choose to live differently from today forward? The truth is, most people never choose. They react their entire lives. They respond to insults with anger, to discomfort with avoidance, to challenge with frustration. They're not living, they're surviving. And somewhere deep down, they know it. They feel the emotional exhaustion, the lack of direction, the constant search for external validation. But the Stoic doesn't chase validation. He builds character. And so can you. Inner strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, choice by choice, day by day. It's built every time you hold your tongue when you could lash out, every time you pause instead of argue, every time you reflect instead of react. This strength is forged in discomfort. It is trained in the quiet moments when no one's watching, when you could take the easy way out, but instead you choose the path of discipline and integrity. The Stoic knows that there is no peace in trying to control everything outside of you. People will be rude, life will be unfair, plans will fall apart, and you will not always be respected, understood, or appreciated. But that's okay, because peace is not found in their approval, it's found in your alignment. When you live by your principles, when you act with virtue, when you choose calm over chaos, you become untouchable. Not because the world stops testing you, but because you stop needing to prove anything. You've learned that the strongest person is not the loudest in the room. It's the one who can walk away in silence, the one who doesn't need to win an argument to know they're right, the one who turns anger into reflection, pain into insight, and challenges into training. That is the essence of the Stoic path, not perfection, but progress, not ego, but mastery. So here's your invitation. Don't just think about these principles, live them. Start today. Observe yourself when you're triggered. Choose silence when you feel the need to retaliate. Reflect every evening, even if just for a few minutes. Practice restraint, not because you're weak, but because you are training yourself to be unshakable. Over time, you'll notice something remarkable. Peace becomes your default, and that peace is more valuable than any victory the ego could ever offer. Lead yourself with intention. Speak less, but mean more. Think deeper, but react slower. Every moment is an opportunity to train the soul, to build a version of yourself you admire in private, even when no one else is watching. That's where greatness lives, not in applause, but in quiet consistency, not in being seen, but in becoming. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to stay grounded on your Stoic journey. Share this with someone who needs a reminder of their inner strength. And remember, you are not behind, you are not broken, you are simply becoming. Stay rooted, stay calm, and above all, stay true to yourself.